I'm able to explore the many angles thereof to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well.
Thanks for joining us on World Now. Let's begin here in Africa, specifically Kenya, where parents have been waiting anxiously to find out if their missing children are still alive after a fire outbreak at boarding school in central Kenya. Friday morning, the Ministry of Education confirmed 17 pupils dead, while the Vice President said 70 children were unaccounted for, raising fear the death toll could not be verified. It is thought some of these children may have run into the local community to escape the fire or were picked up by their parents without the school knowing. More than 150 pupils were in the dormitory where it caught fire at about midnight. When parents were taken to identify the bodies of their children, many burned beyond recognition. Firefighters were delayed by bad roads leading to the school remote area. According to the police, the average age of the affected victims are about 9 years old. The exact cause is not currently known. And staying with matters arising in Africa, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu says the country is going through reforms and the government is taking very bold and unprecedented decisions to ensure rapid development. That was one of the major highlights of his discussion with Nigerians residents in China. President Tinubu made reference to the current petrol scarcity and hike in price, saying the hard decisions are needed to pave the way for development in the country. President Tinubu emphasized his effort to strengthen cooperation in infrastructure, trade, finance, and other areas during his discussions with President Xi Jinping at the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation.
The country is going through a very strong phase of reform, and this reform is taking a very bold and hard decision. For example, you might be hearing from home now in the last few days about fuel prices. But can we help it? Can we develop? You use their good roads there. You see electricity being constant. You see water supply being constant and running. What is the critical path to get us there? If we cannot take hard, painful decisions to pave the way for that country that is so blessed, so talented, so many of you talents here speaking Chinese and all, their language. It is what you equally contribute and tell them at home that we reflect in the attitude of our parents.
We believe that your engagement in China will pave the way for significant advancements in trade, investment, and bilateral collaboration. We are confident that your leadership will inspire new avenues for prosperity and mutual benefit, reflecting the strength and resilience of Nigeria.
And in its war with Russian invaders, Ukraine appears to be calling on a fleet of fire-spewing Dragon drones, putting a modern twist on the munition used to horrific effect in both world wars. A series of videos reportedly show the low-flying drones dropping torrents of fire, actually molten metal on Russian-held positions in 3 lines. The white-hot mixture of aluminium powder and iron oxide, called thermite, burns at temperatures up to 2,200 degrees Celsius. It can quickly burn off trees and vegetation which are given cover to Russian troops, if not killing or disabling the troops outright. And for more on this development, global affairs analyst Catch Ononju joins me from Abuja. Good afternoon.
Are you there?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you please unmute yourself? Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am unmuted. I'm good. I can hear you very well.
Right. Now, in what has been termed one of Ukraine's drone attacks on Russia, Ukraine seems to have put on a modern twist to the weapon used in its recent attacks on Russia. We've seen videos showing low-flying drones dropping torrents of fire. Now, can you talk to us more about the potency of this weaponry? How deadly is it? All right, we apologize for that poor audio quality. We'll come back to that story later in the bulletin. And the United Nations has called for a full investigation into the killing of a US-Turkish woman in the occupied West Bank Friday during a protest. Local media reported that she was shot dead by Israeli forces as she took part in a weekly protest against the expansion of Jewish settlements in the town of Beit now near Nablus. Israel's military said it is looking into reports indicating the foreign national was killed as a result of shots fired in the area. We have a report.
In reaction to the killing, the spokesman for the United Nations Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, says the UN wants to see full investigation of the circumstances surrounding the death and people held accountable, adding that civilians must be protected at all times. In the same vein, the United States has also called for an investigation into the incident. Spokesman for the White House National Security Council, Sean Savage, says Washington is deeply disturbed by the tragic death of an American citizen. Mr. Savage says the U.S. has reached out to the government of Israel to ask for more information and also requested an investigation into the incident. An eyewitness says after the sounds of 2 gunshots, he found the victim, Miss Iggy, lying on the ground underneath an olive tree, bleeding to death from her head. Shortly after, medics rushed her into an ambulance. Friday's demonstration was reportedly Miss Iggy's first time attending a protest with the International Solidarity Movement, a pro-Palestinian group. The dual national was rushed to a hospital in Nablus and later pronounced dead. The head of the hospital where Miss Iggy was admitted, Dr. Faoud Nafa, confirmed that a U.S. citizen in her mid-20s had died from a gunshot in the head. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, condemned the tragic loss, while the president of Turkey, Recep Erdogan, branded the Israeli action barbaric. Turkey's foreign ministry says Ms. Iggy had been killed by Israeli occupation soldiers in the city of Nablus. Ms. Iggy graduated recently from the University of Washington in Seattle before traveling to the Middle East. The president of the school described the news of her death as awful, adding that Ms. Iggy had had a positive influence on other students.
Now let's turn our attention to France, where mass protests over an unacceptable leadership choice is looming. Left-wing politicians were not in agreement with President Emmanuel Macron's choice of 73-year-old Michel Barnier as Prime Minister. Have called for protests. Right-wing politicians are also boiling. We have a report.
60 days after parliamentary election, the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, chose the former EU Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, as Prime Minister. That action left France in a political deadlock, with 3 powerful blocs, the left being the largest, not being able to form a majority in the National Assembly. Mr. Michael Barnier, who is from the center-right, said he was open to forming a government that will include members of the left. But Mr. Barnier's survival is expected to depend on the votes of the far-right party. But they have made clear they will not join his government. He began the formation of a government a day after he took office. That's after he had a meeting with President Macron. After talks with the leaders of the right-wing Republicans and the president's centrist Ensemble group, the 73-year-old new Prime Minister Michael Barnier said discussions were going very well and he's willing to select ministers from across political spectrums of France, including politicians from the left. But parties of the left are angry that their candidate for Prime Minister, Lucie Castex, was rejected by President Emmanuel Macron because she had no chance of surviving a vote of confidence in the National Assembly. A firebrand politician from the radical France Unbowed Party, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, has called for marches across France for the most powerful mobilization possible. Some labor unions and youth groups have indicated their interest in taking part in a mass protest.
You're watching TVC News. We'll take a moment and return with more stories. Please stay with us.